Hello and welcome to Global Business, CCTV's new program with insights into Africa's ever-changing business landscape. From Nairobi to Johannesburg, from Lagos to Cairo, from small entrepreneurs to large-scale enterprises, we take you directly to the people behind the stories. I'm Jitu Abraham here in the Kenyan capital of Nairobi, where it's 9 p.m. It's 2 p.m. in Washington, D.C. and 2 a.m. in Beijing. Wherever you're joining us from, welcome. We look at implications of Egypt's renewed ties with Russia on its trade with the U.S. And Uganda shines the spotlight on MTN for tax debt. And the multi-billion-dollar industry that is African hair. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi ended his two-day visit to Russia, where he worked to strengthen economic cooperation between the two countries. Now, although this makes some question Egypt's relation with Western nations that have imposed sanctions on Russia over its offensive in the Ukraine. Yasser Hakim with the details.
Economy took a fair share of the talks between the two leaders. Unlike former presidents Anwar al-Sadat and Hosni Mubarak, who favored the United States, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi turned down an invitation to Washington. Instead, he traveled to Russia for support to rebuild the shattered economy from 3 years of turmoil.
The Egyptian president is disappointed with the US for not backing the country when it needed them the most. He decided that Russia, China and the Gulf states are the ones for the future.
The trip resulted in a plan to build an economic partnership rather than just trade relations. Russian industrial zones and free trade areas will be established. A four-way free tariffs union that includes Belarus and Kazakhstan is underway, while Putin announced that Russia will invest heavily in the new Suez Canal project. But that's not all.
Energy is crucial for Egypt. Russia will be providing gas and fuel shipments soon. More vital is the nuclear power station that Egypt will build. The Russians can help out with technical and financial support.
Tourism, an integral industry for the economy, has suffered lately. Putin promised to increase the number of Russian tourists to exceed the 2 million who arrive annually.
Egypt hopes to retain the Russian tourism inflow to Egypt because tourism is an extremely important sector and the main pillar of the economic cooperation between both countries.
Russia as well will benefit from Egypt's status as the largest importer of wheat in the world at 15 million tons per year.
We supply nearly 40% of the wheat imported to Egypt, and 90% of what we import from Egypt are agricultural products. It increased by 30% before, and it could increase by another 30% soon.
With the US-European embargo placed on Russia, Egypt will be an alternative source of products such as vegetables and fruits. Egypt had strong economic and political ties with Russia in the 1950s and 60s. The heavy industry backbone of the economy was built by the Russians. After a slowdown in relations for years, this visit seems to mark a new phase in their ties. Yasser Hakim for CCTV, Cairo.
Daniel Renches now joins us for some analysis, and he's live for us from Washington, D.C. Daniel, how is the U.S. feeling about Egypt's new Look East inclination, and what implications could this have on U.S.-Egypt relations, including for aid going forward?
I think to understand the US-Egyptian relationship, you have to understand that there are two major dynamics here. The first is the fact that there is deep disquiet and concern about the way that the Egyptian government has handled those who dissent against it. A Human Rights Watch report recently came out suggesting that in cold blood about 1,000 people were gunned down, peaceful protesters mostly. Also, we have the jailing of various journalists, which has also caused concern, not least because Secretary Cherry went to Cairo for talks with al-Sisi at the same time that these journalists were being jailed. So there is a lot of concern on that side of things. But fundamentally, it's not changing the relationship as far as I can see it. And that relationship is built on the platform of the 1979 peace treaty with Israel and the strategic dynamics that exist for the US and its Israeli partner in the region. In other words, they provide about $1.3 billion in military aid to the Egyptians on the understanding that the relationship with Israel and Egypt is kept at a very stable level. In fact, indeed, that the Egyptians can sometimes do things directly in the interests of the Israelis. There was an attempt by the US Congress, members of the US Congress, to decrease the amount of military aid and increase the amount of civilian aid partially. That effort was stymied recently by the efforts of pro-Israeli lobbyists. So it demonstrates that the main dynamic here in Washington continues to be the security one.
All right, we'll now rope in Yasser Hakim, who's joining us live from Cairo. Yasser, as you said in your package, unlike former Presidents Anwar Sadat and Hosni Mubarak, who favored the U.S., current President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi turned down President Barack Obama's invitation to the U.S.-Africa summit last week and seems to be leaning more to this look east for support and financial backing mentality. What factors have been contributing towards this shift?
Well, what al-Sisi has shown is a kind of a disappointment towards the United States. First of all, because it did not support the ouster of former President Mohamed Morsi, and they considered it a coup d'etat, whereas al-Sisi and the Egyptian leadership see it as a revolution. Second of all, the United States blocked an Apache deal, helicopter deal, that was signed before and was supposed to arrive to Egypt. And al-Sisi finds that this was a way to put hurdles on his crackdown on terrorists, especially in northern Sinai, and that the United States not helping him out in this fight on terror. And third of all, like we just said now, the military aid according to the peace treaty in 1979, and that was also postponed, although it should go as scheduled every year. Now, but we have to note that it does not mean that Egypt will cut off ties or reduce ties with the U.S. Sisi also said that the U.S. is still an ally. Egypt is still an ally of the U.S. The ties are strong, but what he's doing is that he's opening up other options. Maybe his predecessors did not go that road, but he's trying to say that he will look at alternatives when he cannot find what he needs from the United States, such as the military aid and equipment he needs. And in his last visit yesterday, he talked about receiving military equipment from Russia to help him out in his, what he says, his fight on terror.
Yes, if we can stay with you, Putin's move to restrict EU, US, Australian, Canadian and Norwegian food exports to Russia could mean a big boost to Egypt's food deliverables if they were to win these contracts. Now, what could this mean for Egypt's economy?
Egypt badly needs any kind of revenue. It needs to work on opening up its businesses. A lot of factories have closed down. A lot of businesses have shut down in the last 3 years. And these deals will start to make the economy move. There will be more exports through these deals. It will be easier to export Egyptian products at lower prices, easier to import at lower prices without the tariffs. And therefore, it will be more opportunities for employment, more opportunities for hard currency to come in, as Egypt's foreign reserves have been dwindling in the last 3 years. So for Egypt, it's an opportunity, as well as on a longer term, Egypt is hoping with Russia to get the support of Russia to enter the BRICS, something Egypt has been looking forward to for the past few years, and hoping this could be another step to join the BRICS later on.
Daniel, if we can go to you, Egypt and the countries of the customs unions are said to be looking into creating a free trade zone. What would a free trade zone look like, and how could this impact the U.S.?
Well, the US is Egypt's largest trading partner as things currently stand. That may change in the future. But the numbers from the US perspective are still fairly low, about $8 billion or so of trade, two-way trade each year. So I think there is an imperative on the part of the Americans to see a general reform of trade and commerce policy in Egypt in order that investments can be reaped. So the US is a large foreign direct investor in Egypt and wants to continue that relationship. There have been meetings here in Washington with the Egyptian finance minister and the investment minister, and a promise for a return visit in November. The business community here in the United States is behind the notion of increasing trade and investment with Egypt. I don't think this is a zero-sum game. If there are major economic reforms in Egypt, that can only benefit all of Egypt's trading partners going forward.
All right, thank you for that. Daniel Renches joining us live from Washington, D.C., and Yasser Hakim joining us from Cairo. Thank you both. Moving now to the international telecom operator MTN, which is one of 5 companies accused by Uganda of withholding tax payments. Now, this is despite the country agreeing that the dispute be settled by the World Customs Organization. MTN and French-owned operator Orange were listed by Uganda's Auditor General as being in debt. According to Uganda, the tax debt has been outstanding since July of 2009, when MTN objected its tax assessment. The dispute rose when MTN imported spare parts for its network. The Uganda Revenue Authority wanted to impose a tariff for a complete unit. Both parties agreed to refer the matter to the World Customs Organization for guidance. Multinational companies are under increased scrutiny in Africa as countries struggle to build their modest tax revenue base. Kenya Airways is seeking compensation from Kenya Airport Authority over a fire that led to significant revenue losses for the national carrier. KQ wants Kenya's High Court to rule in their favor of a claim compelling the airport authority to pay $3.8 million in damages. Kenya Airways alleges that the authority failed to provide adequate firefighting equipment at the airport where the carrier's main hub is located. The Kenya Airport Authority says it is waiting to receive court summons and could not yet comment on the case. The fire at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport occurred in the early hours of the morning on August 7th of 2013. The International Arrivals building was engulfed in flames, forcing a temporary closure of the terminal. This ultimately led to numerous flight cancellations. The airline's 26.7% owned by Air France KLM and 29.8% owned by the Kenyan government, estimated revenue losses of up to $4 million. Let's look now at the African markets that we track here for you to see how they're closing the day. Specifically, let's look at South Africa, where stocks rose on Monday after the central bank stepped in to bail out the troubled able from a flood of bad debt. Now let's talk about the Ebola virus and how it's been affecting our markets. Investors are saying that perceived risk could affect the markets, potentially isolating them. Now, although this could be beneficial to investors looking to acquire African stocks at a decreased price. And how African development mobile money technology is being taken up in Europe.
Africa is on the move. It's home to 7 of the world's 10 fastest growing economies.
From small businesses to large-scale enterprises, hear directly from entrepreneurs behind the story. It's about putting you in the picture so you know where Africa fits in the global context.
Global Business, weekdays at this time on CCTV Africa.
The rebasing of Nigeria's GDP has been a long time in coming.
The information provides us much more scope to know what the structure of the economy is.
Welcome back. You're watching Global Business. Now, Africans have long used technology, developed abroad, but now a Kenyan money transfer system is being adopted in Europe. The M-Pesa mobile money system allows clients to send cash with their phones and pay for bills remotely. The system has helped business activity in Africa and hopes to do the same in Europe. The story makes today's What's Hot segment.
Going cashless is easier in Nairobi than New York. thanks to Kenya's leading mobile money system, M-Pesa. With M-Pesa, M for mobile and Pesa, Swahili for money, you can make your payments without necessarily handling money. You can pay for anything including electricity bills, groceries, taxi fares and even school fees. After paying money to an M-Pesa agent who credits the cash to your phone, you can transfer money to a friend, pay bills or withdraw your cash back out.
On a normal day like here, personally I get about 10 customers who pay via M-Pesa, and that's just me. So if you think about all the businesses in Nairobi, considering there are about 5,000 outlets just in town itself of M-Pesa. And these people make money every day because they don't shut down.
Launched in 2007 by telecom operator Safaricom, almost half of the country's $44 billion economy passes through the system. It has since been extended to Tanzania, Egypt, India and Mozambique, as well as now Europe.
I save time for sure, plus I think the transaction fees are smaller, but most importantly I save time. Everyone has a mobile phone and it's very simple to send and receive money or make payments. We can pay utility bills directly with M-Pesa.
In part, M-Pesa succeeded in Kenya by meeting the needs of the unbanked, and Romania was chosen as Europe's launch point for the service because many here still rely primarily on cash. But moving beyond developing countries means adapting to fresh challenges. For instance, they'll have to face different regulatory environments and consumers who already have access to a wide range of financial services.
From East Africa to Eastern Europe, I mean, that's quite phenomenal, when you think about it. And I think this is something that the rest of the world can look at to say that there are ideas that can emanate out of the developing world and take it to the developed world.
How Europe will embrace Kenya's pioneering export is still far from certain, but already M-Pesa has brought Swahili into the language of global finance. Mahia Mutua, CCTV.
Chinese company by the name of Jinko Solar opened in South Africa. Now, the company is said to have invested some $8 million into the Cape Town branch and is currently considered the biggest solar plant in South Africa. This Chinese company is seen as a stepping stone that will help Africa to participate more actively in green energy activities.
Most of South Africa's electricity is generated from coal-fired power stations. Solar power contributes just about 100 gigawatts, which is under 1% of total electricity in South Africa. But something else is happening. Chinese solar products cost 30 to 40% less than their Western counterparts, leading to an attraction by South African users. Already, Chinese solar power plants account for half of South Africa's solar energy market.
In Africa, we have very little electrification. More than 70% of Africa is not electrified, and we will leapfrog the old technologies. We will go straight from candles to green energy. We won't build Africa's power on grids through coal and oil, as they have done in every other country, and that is why China is so far-sighted to see the potential of investing in Cape Town with good skills base, with a good infrastructure base, with a good institutional base, and so they can in fact spread into the whole of Africa and bring green energy to Africa as the first kind of energy that can be spread throughout this continent to turn it into the light and bright continent.
Currently, the lack of energy in Africa has resulted in many countries being unable to meet their residents' daily necessities. Based on this situation, many Chinese companies under the guidance of the Chinese government have come to Africa to help develop their energy infrastructure.
Our rainfall is very erratic, so because of that we were suffering a lot in a shortage of rainfall and have a drought in this country. Now things are changing. Our way of doing the economic development, the Chinese as well as different other countries are interested to support us. That's why we are working together.
Kenya, Egypt, Morocco, Ethiopia, Libya, and South Africa are among countries that China has helped build green energy facilities and has entered into the implementation phase. There are a lot of countries that plan to cooperate with China or use Chinese technology to enter the energy market.
Let's look now at the commodity prices to see how they're closing the day. Specifically, let's look at Brent crude, which extended losses for a third straight session, dropping below $104 a barrel as new political tensions on the streets of Baghdad were seen as holding little threat to the OPEC producers' oil output. And coming up, we look at the multi-billion-dollar industry of African hair. Welcome back. You're watching Global Business. Now, the trend for people here on the continent to change up their hairstyles on a regular basis is helping the hair care industry grow into a multi-billion-dollar industry. Now, while most of the business is still largely operating within the informal sector, global giants like L'Oreal and Unilever also have stake in the industry. As Mahia Matuya now reports on tonight's Grassroots segment, customers and their cash are in abundance.
With the skill of a master weaver, Josephine Agua spins synthetic fiber into a woman's hair in Abuja, Nigeria. 3 more customers are waiting for their turn, spending a minimum of $40 and several hours for a perfect hairdo. Though still concentrated in the informal sector, Africa's hair care business has become a multi-billion-dollar industry that has drawn global giants such as L'Oreal and Unilever. Euromonitor International estimates over $1 billion worth of shampoos, relaxers and hair lotions were sold in South Africa, Nigeria and Cameroon alone last year. It sees the overall hair care market growing by about 5% from 2013 to 2018 in Nigeria and Cameroon. With a slight decline for the more mature South African market, this does not include sales from more than 40 other sub-Saharan countries or the huge dry hair market of weaves, extensions and wigs.
South African women change their hairstyle between 6 to 12 times a year. So the average is 8. So you imagine if you compare to a Caucasian or an Asian woman, it's totally different ritual and culture. And they move from straight hair to dreads, to braids, to extensions. They color their hair sometimes with very fancy colors. So they are very, very daring.
Hair care is also a vital source of jobs for women and men across the continent.
For 1 month? At least 3 times in a month, although you can stay for 1 month with one hairstyle unless you want to change it. Most hairstyles last 2 or 3 weeks before they need to be changed. If you have a lot of customers, then it pays well because we mostly depend on satisfied customers who refer more clients.
If I look ugly, will you like me? You will not like me. Yes, because I'm married and my husband wants me to tidy up myself. So hair is very important, and hair is the beauty of a woman.
Most well-established salons source much of their natural hair from India, which has a culture of hair collection, particularly from Hindu temples or village hair collectors. The hair is then processed into extensions and shipped to Africa. Mahia Mutua, CCTV.
And here's something that's bound to excite your taste buds. Imagine being able to indulge in guilt-free chocolate. Well, it is possible. A South African chocolate manufacturing company has a type of chocolate that retains its antioxidant. This good-for-you treat is every chocolate lover's dream. Susan Wangeli has the report.
Chocolate on chocolate. It's a rather indulgent dream come true. But there's always a concern of how healthy it is. Well, this one's called the Honest Chocolate. And according to its makers, it has all its natural goodness intact. It's heated up to 42 degrees compared to the 130 degrees of commercial chocolate makers. And that's why they call this raw chocolate.
So I think the growing trend for raw chocolate is also embedded in the whole growing raw food movement. So there's a movement to minimal cooking or minimal heating of food, just to retain the natural antioxidants or whatever, the minerals, whatever it may be. So cocoa is part of that. You can do it raw with a very good quality bean.
You may be surprised to know cocoa has several health benefits. Not only is it rich in antioxidants, it's also a mood elevator.
The benefits of the raw chocolate and thereby the cacao is firstly that the cacao has antidepressant qualities.
The Honest Chocolate Company's goods are preservative-free with no artificial coloring or emulsifiers. Sadly, it's not quite as healthy as a stick of celery.
Confection is something that we should eat as a special occasion thing, not every day. And certain confections do need a small amount of sugar just to round out their flavour nicely. I mean, a nice organic chocolate does need a smattering of sugar just to make it fuller. The problem is that with so much confection, it's very cheap, we eat it every day, and it's got much more sugar than is necessary.
But the proof, as they say, is in the tasting.
What I find quite remarkable about their chocolate is that you're not overwhelmed by the sugar, so you actually get to taste the chocolate itself, which is really so luxurious and quite decadent.
So what's the perfect companion to the Honest Chocolate Company's product? Well, a nice coffee or brandy, and you, of course. Susan Mongeli, CCTV.
Let's look now at how your money is trading, specifically looking at South Africa, where the rand steadied against the dollar during a muted trading session in which the local currency fluctuated between firm and weak levels as it tracked moves in developed markets. And coming up tomorrow on Global Business, we look at Kenya's efforts to reach middle income status within the next 15 years. And Uganda is set to increase its cocoa production to take advantage of increased global demand. That's it for this edition of Global Business. Remember, you can send us your feedback to globalbusinessafrica@cctv.com. You can visit our Facebook page, CCTV Africa. You can also stay in touch with Global Business on Twitter using the handle @CCTV News Africa. I'm Jitu Abraham. Thanks for watching.